Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to take a look at some advanced selectors in CSS. In the last video we saw the three most commonly used selectors, namely the element or type selector, the ID selector and the class selector, and we also took a look at the grouping of selectors as well. There are many variations on these common selectors when we start to combine them together and add rules that allow us to be much more specific about the elements that we are selecting. So in this video we're going to take a look at two of these advanced selectors, and these are the child selector and the descendant selector. The child and descendant selectors select elements based on their relationship with a parent element, and each of these selectors is what we would call a combinator, in that they combine one or more of the selector types that we already know. These kinds of selectors allow us to really burrow down into our documents and be much more specific about what we are selecting. So let's have a look at what all the fuss is about and dive right in. So I have a simple project open here in VS Code, and like always you can find the link to the starting and ending code in the description below. It's a simple HTML file that has two linked style sheets, one where I've added the general styles for the page, which you don't need to touch unless you want to add your own general styling for the page, and a second file called selectors.css, which is currently blank. This is the file that we'll work in this video. To get this code, you can either download this project from GitHub using this green download button, and then you simply open it in your text editor of choice, which is VS Code in my case. Alternatively, you might not be able to download the project. Perhaps you're working on a public computer, for example, so there are CodePen links to the starting and ending files as well. The only difference with CodePen is that we just have one CSS panel to work in, so all of the selectors that you'll create in this video will just go at the bottom underneath the general styles, and I have added comments to indicate where to write each selector. You don't need to create a CodePen account to work with this file. You can just start coding as soon as you open the link. It does help if you do have an account, and I would recommend it, as CodePen is a really great resource. It's free and you can save any pens you work on to your own profile and come back later on. At the top of this page I have some links to MDN resources on what we covered in the last video. I won't be explaining those selectors in any detail in this video, so if you do need a refresher on those common selector types, have a read of these MDN pages or go back and watch the previous video which covers those selectors in detail. The link to that is appearing on screen now and is below in the description for you as well. So we'll begin with what is known as the child selector, and to help us understand what we mean when we use the term child, we need to look at typical HTML document structure. CSS is powerful because it takes advantage of the structure of HTML documents to determine how to apply styles to elements. Much of the real power of CSS stems from the parent-child relationship of elements. HTML documents have a hierarchy of elements, starting with the HTML element, which is the parent of head and body elements, and each of these in turn is a parent to other elements which have children and siblings of their own. We can see this represented in this tree-like representation of an HTML document. An element is the parent of another if it appears directly above that element in the document hierarchy. So here, the first P or paragraph element is parent to the M or emphasis and A elements, while A is parent to a strong element. Conversely, an element is the child of another element if it is directly beneath the other element. Thus, these LI or list items are children of the OL element, which is in turn a child of the body element. If an element is exactly one level above or below another, then they have this parent-child relationship. And if an element is two or more levels away from another element, then these will have not a parent-child relationship, but instead will have an ancestor-descendant relationship. So the HTML element is an ancestor of these LI elements rather than a parent, and the A element or the LI elements again are descendants of the body. So if an element is one level above or below another, then they have a parent-child relationship, and if an element is more than one level above or below in the document structure, then these elements have an ancestor-descendant relationship. So let's now explore how we select elements based on these relationships, starting with the child selector, which enables us to make use of the parent-child relationships of elements. So the child selector targets elements that are direct children of given and named parent elements. So here we have the body element that we see in every HTML5 boilerplate, and inside we have this div with the class of container. This div is the child of the body. Inside the div, if we expand this, we have this h1 and a series of sections, and each of these is a child of the container div. These aren't direct children of the body, but are rather descendants of it, as we know. They are one level below the div, so children of the div, but 2 levels below the body, and so these are descendants of the body elements. So let's expand this semantic section element here with the class of child. Inside this section we have other elements, an h2, a div, and 2 paragraph elements. These are all children of the section with the class of child. This div also has children of its own, a code element and a paragraph element, which again are not children of the section element, but rather descendants. With these ideas in mind, let's head to the selectors.css file now, and we'll write some code to select some elements based upon these relationships. I'm going to write child, angled bracket, p. Here we're selecting any elements that have the child class applied, which is only this one particular section. And then we're saying, look, within that element for paragraph elements, one level below. Or put another way, we're looking for paragraph elements that are children of the element that has the child class. We have 3 paragraphs in this section, but only 2 meet the criteria that we're after. We shouldn't be selecting this first paragraph, which is nested another level down inside a div, but we should be selecting these 2 as these are direct children of the element that has the child class. So if we now add our declaration block, we'll add a color of magenta. And when we save, we do indeed see that we have only selected the paragraph elements that are direct children. So the syntax for selecting children is that we add the parent element first, and we can select the parent element by its class, by its ID, by its element name, or even by an attribute that it has. And we'll look at how to do this in an upcoming video. We would follow that then by a greater than angled bracket, and then the element that we want to target. So again, here we're targeting any p elements that are the direct children of elements with the class of child, but not other p elements on the page, and not p elements that may be descendants but are not direct children. If we did want to target the p element that was nested inside of the div, or any element that was a descendant rather than a child of a given element, we could use a descendant selector. The descendant selector doesn't discriminate, and it will select all name elements that are nested, however deep within a parent element, so those elements that are descendants of a given and named element. We saw this tree structure earlier, so this selector is going to allow us to name an element, say the p element, and then target not just a child like the M or A tag, but to go levels deeper down and target the strong tag, or any other element that is nested one or more level deeper. So in our HTML, we'll move to the next section element, and we'll collapse the section with the child class and expand out the section with the class of descendant. This contains, at various different levels, 3 paragraphs. One paragraph is a direct child and the others are descendants. This second paragraph is nested another level down inside a div, and this one is nested really deep inside 5 divs. So we already know the syntax if we want to select only this first paragraph. That's easy because it's a direct child of this section element with the descendant class. So if we save that now, we have that paragraph saved, but we want the p elements that are descendants and not just direct children. So the syntax is really similar to the syntax for a child selector, with one small change. This time I simply separate the parent element from the descendant element with a space rather than using the greater than angled bracket. So I'll delete that, and now I'm targeting all paragraph elements that are descendants of the elements with the class of descendant. I'll save, and we see the difference between the descendant selector we are now using and the child selector that we used previously. The space between the selectors is an example of a combinator. Each space combinator can be read as something which is a descendant of. So if you read the selector right to left, which I always find easier to do, so descendant P can be read as any paragraph element that is a descendant of an element with the descendant class. All paragraph elements that are descendants of an element with the descendant class are now magenta, even those that are nested super deep. We also see that elements that are direct children are also descendants, and they are selected as well. So the descendant selector is less discriminatory and will target any matching element nested within whichever element that you target. We can also list more than two elements separated by spaces. So for example, if we only wanted to target paragraph elements within this section that are nested inside divs, we could say descendant div and then the paragraph element. Now we're saying here, if we read right to left, select any P elements that are descendants of divs that are descendants of elements with a descendant class. We could even say this to target elements that are direct children of divs that are descendants of elements with a descendant class. At the moment, that is still both of our divs. But if I change the innermost div in the HTML to say an article element, then this paragraph here ceases to be a direct child of a div, and only one paragraph element now meets our condition. If we change the selector back to this, then our deeply nested paragraph is selected again, as it meets the condition of being a paragraph that is the descendant of a div. So there's lots that we can do with these child and descendant combinator selectors, and we can even combine them into multi-element statements. So it's pretty powerful stuff that allows us to target exactly the element or elements that we want. So I think we'll leave things there. This was child and descendant CSS selectors, and in this video we pushed on a little further from what we saw in the previous video, which covered the basic foundations of selectors by targeting elements, classes and IDs. We looked here at how we select the direct children of given elements, so we can target elements that are nested one level deep inside of a parent element. Additionally, we also looked at the descendant selector, which is less discriminatory and will select elements of a specified type within a parent, no matter how many levels deep they are nested. Okay, so we'll stop here. If you found this video useful, then please do remember to like, subscribe, share, and all of that good stuff, as it really helps with YouTube's algorithm, and it will make the channel much more discoverable for people that could really benefit from the content that we're posting. Also, reach out to us on social media or in the comments section below if you have any questions or feedback, or even if you just want to say hi. Links to all of the resources used in the video are in the description below, and if there's any useful resources that you know of, then add them in the comments below and I can put them in the description. So thanks so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Join me in the next video, which is going to be on sibling selectors in CSS. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.